Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
It had been raining lightly since morning, and by lunchtime the sky had turned leaden. Nina looked out of the window every 5 minutes. It looked as if white flies were about to fly. I wish we could make it to the cemetery in time. A friend of her late mother's spoke of funerals as an ordinary event. And that kind of domesticity made Kelly uncomfortable. "Aunt Nina, please don't do that." The woman reacted instantly. "Kelly, how am I supposed to talk?" "I don't know, but not like that." "You don't get to tell me what to say, sweetheart. You're the one who left my mother alone, not me. You didn't even show up when I telegraphed you that Molly had gone bad." "Aunt Nina, I've explained to you 100 times that I changed my place of residence a long time ago. That's why I didn't receive your telegram." A series of deep sighs followed, jumping from bump to bump, always looking for somewhere on dry land. "Your mother's been hopping all her life too. This one did. And when she was young, she could still enjoy life." Nina expressed her opinion with clear condemnation. They sympathized with the admirer, but remembering the traditions, she immediately crossed herself, and then gingerly rolled towards the big room, where in the very center on a stool stood the coffin with Molly's body. Close to it stood a table with an icon, in front of which candles burned in sections. Yes, the mountain would have to be relit too. Aunt Nina looked anxiously at Kelly, but she answered calmly that in half an hour the ritual agency would be here. So there was no point in wasting candles. "We should take more to the cemetery. The bishop promised to arrive at 1 o'clock. Nina grumbled everything is not like people and why spend money. If our men would dig a grave for a bottle? Or do you want to be cool? Kelly could barely contain Aunt Nina's irritation. "I just want to give my mother a proper send-off. Even if I paid money, I am sure that the employees of the firm will do their job properly." Nina raised her voice too. So our men were not as good as they looked. Kelly didn't miss the opportunity to be sarcastic. "On the contrary, they're too good at that part. It's hypertrophied, so a bottle won't be enough for them. And anyway, Aunt Nina, I don't want to make a show out of the funeral." "What do we do?" "First, they cry, then they laugh and jump around. And I'd really like you to be careful what you say about money. It's past the time when everyone told me what to do." Miranda pressed her lips together resentfully and began to check the prepared bags. "Kelly, are you going to pick up Grandma? Uncle Ben will bring her. At least he promised. But you know Grandma," Aunt Nina said in a peaceful way. "I know how I know her. Adriana has 7 Fridays in a week. One day she wants one thing, the next day she wants something else. Kelly, I'm sorry, but I want to ask you about the house. What are you going to do about it?" Kelly didn't have the energy to be angry anymore. "Aunt Nina, I think it's unseemly to discuss such matters when the mistress is still in the house." The woman smirked. "So she's a suitor. What can she do now? She doesn't care what you and Katya do now. After all, you're Kelly's only heir. If you need to know how to sell the house, don't forget Aunt Nina. We've been friends with your mom for years." And Kelly couldn't find the right words to say. And at this time just arrived funeral brigade drivers. Head of the ritual firm and one person began to command the process. "Guys, let's hurry up, or it's going to be a light show. You see how the sky is overcast." The men quickly loaded the coffin in the back, and the chief ordered the women ladies, "Please get in the cab there at the cemetery. Our guys have already completely sat down." The ritual firm has earned a positive reputation in the region thanks to a competent approach to the funeral process, so that the funeral event passed without unpleasant misunderstandings. One part of the team was engaged in transportation, and the second worked directly in the place of burial. The Pogost was about 5 kilometers from the village. It was a place open to all winds, and the participants of the funeral ceremony were quickly freezing. Even Priest Austin, reading the Requiem Lithia, as promised Nina. Soon over the heads of the farewells, loaded snowflakes, and a friend of the deceased suddenly let a tear. Molly so did not want to die in winter in the tone of Aunt Nina for said Baba Adriana, whom the eldest son supported under the arms. "Daughter, why did you leave this world before me? How can I live alone now, when you were not around, and will never be?" From the fists of his woman looked expressively at Kelly. waiting for the continuation of lamentations. But the daughter did not shed a tear. She leaned over the deceased and whispered something. Grandmother Adriana nudged her granddaughter from behind, kissing her mother, said a human farewell. Kelly looked at the grandmother so that she lost the will to speak. She went first to her uncle's car and settled in the back seat. Soon both Granny and Aunt Nena reached the landing place. The latter decided to speak her mind. "I'm sorry to pry, but that's the way only idiots do it. Kelly, I'm telling you, your mom's dead. She's gone, okay? You're never going to be able to talk to her again. She's never going to hug you again." Kelly felt a dam breaking inside. "Aunt Nina, don't pry into my soul. You'd better be quiet now." Adriana muttered quietly, yes. It was customary to speak well of the dead, or keep quiet. Kelly thanked her grandmother with a look, and there was an oppressive silence in the car. And all the way home they drove in silence. The memorial meal passed quietly and without unnecessary words. Nina sadly remarked I had cooked so much all night and stood at the stove. And no one came. Even the neighbors didn't want to honor the memory of the deceased. Adriana had a little olive after a drink and loosened her tongue. Comes to those she respects. Molly had a beef with everyone in her lifetime, even though she's my daughter. And I like things to be fair, so she was destined to do that. Many times in her short life, Kelly had heard the saying, but it was only now, after the funeral of the woman who given birth to her, that she realized its meaning. Despite the symbolic name, Molly bore a little resemblance to one from whom care and tenderness emanated. Sure, she was familiar with the feeling of love, but she gave it to anyone but her only daughter. Kelly's earliest childhood memories are of the constant arguments between her mother and grandmother. Adriana considered it her sacred duty to control her wayward daughter. She usually showed up at the most inconvenient moment for anyone and right from the doorstep, started working out Molly. "What are you doing?" "I'm already ashamed to walk down the street. People are pointing fingers at me." To such claims followed the answer of Mom. "I don't understand. What's it got to do with me?" They point at you. Maybe you're dressed shabbily or you're not involved. And you go out on the street. Passions began to heat up, and grandmother went directly to the heart of the matter. "Are you laughing?" "Nothing. You'll play sometime. All the townsfolk. The women have had it in for you for a long time. The day will come when they'll all cancel. They'll tell you, or they'll make a deal, or they'll hire someone." Kelly's mother laughed uproariously at that kind of speculation. "Mom, have you been reading detective stories? I didn't hurt anybody. And it's not my fault that men come to me. They're coming at you like flies, stickers, and tape. And that's because, Molly, you give them a reason to. Would a normal woman go for another man's husband?" Adriana changed her intonation exactly at this point, as if trying to dissuade her daughter from a bad idea. But Molly took all these passages with laughter or outright mockery. "I don't see anything wrong with temporarily using someone else's man. As they say, it won't rub off. Shut up, shameless. At least you're ashamed of your daughter. I'm not even talking about me." Strangely enough, but both women were not embarrassed by the presence of a child during their arguments, and every time Adriana made sure to mention the girl's father. "I even wonder how you, Alex, put up with such a good man, a family man, for so many years. What kind of domino he built? Live and be happy. No, you were not satisfied with a normal life. All she was pulling adventures. So the man couldn't stand it. And good riddance. Alex, you're even worse than brains. I hope he found the right, and most importantly, a very decent woman. After all, in his eyes I was a fallen, unworthy of his pure love and woman. And about Kelly, I have nothing to reproach. For her sake, I try to lift my daughter alone without help. Really, little Kelly didn't need anything. Molly held the position of post office manager and received a good salary, and her many lovers were not ordinary workers. After the official divorce from Kelly's father, the woman for a long time preferred secret meetings at some abandoned house or hotel. Lovers she changed often, and while the mother diverted her soul. The girl was in her grandmother's care when a tired but satisfied Molly came to pick up the child. Adriana said with undisguised squeamishness, but that on the carpet turned out, and God forbid, still in the house. What kind of contagion are you carrying? Mom, what do you want to tell me all sorts of nasty things? Maybe I'm looking for my happiness this way. All smart people say that it can only be found by trial and error. So I'm trying. Over the years, the woman finally threw away all shame and began to bring her lovers home. True, she abruptly changed tactics and switched to divorced men or widowers. From the conversation in the Bapta, Kelly realized that the most terrible prophecy Adriana still came true. And someone from the offended women arranged a smart one to the head of the post office. Almost 2 weeks Molly sat at home because all her face and body was in bruises. For a few months she resigned herself to it. But rotten nature, as her grandmother used to say, demanded its own. And Molly went back on the rails, only now her immoral affairs also involved her growing daughter. Kelly does not remember the names of all of her mother's temporary husbands, but some characters are remembered very well. The girl was about 12 years old when her mother brought Peter, the father of her classmate, into the house. Kelly thought at first that he had come to find out with her the reason for the constant turmoil between schoolmates. Kelly had been on the best of terms with Nancy, Peter's daughter, since first grade. But the man didn't even hint at the known circumstances. He began to praise the landlady's daughter from the doorstep. "Molly, you have a wonderful daughter. Not my little one told me that she sings well and has a lot of other talents." Kelly did not believe this person because she sang disgustingly and was not friends with anyone in the class. So the guest did not mislead the mother. The girl spoke out frankly, lying is not good. "We and your elite are enemies forever," and she could not say such a thing. The girl turned around and went to her room, and the guest changed from foot to foot in confusion. The mother rushed after her daughter. "Kelly, stop. How do you talk to the elders?" The girl snapped back. "The way I have to talk, that's the way I talk." She slammed the door and didn't leave the room all evening. The next day, Peter moved his things to him, and the mother warned Uncle Peter will now live with us, and I demand respect from you. Mother, respect must be earned. The war with her mother's new husband continued for over 2 years, and one day Kelly came home from school and was delighted to find that Uncle Peter's things, like him, had disappeared himself. Molly did not long grieve alone and after a couple of months brought Uncle Andrew in. He was a quiet and completely harmless man who had lost his wife and son a few years ago. Kelly liked him immediately because he wasn't macho. But Uncle Andrew had one very significant flaw. He liked to drink, and his mother couldn't stand alcoholics. Kelly felt sorry for this very lonely man, whom she wanted to call her father. Uncle Andrew was good at everything. He repaired furniture, changed the wiring in their house, and planted a vegetable garden himself. But after a hard day's work, the man would get quietly drunk. He never got violent. Found a bedroom where he'd pass out until morning. Several times Kelly begged his uncle, "Andrew, please don't drink. You're very good. I don't want Mom to kick you out." The man listened to the girl and thanked her for her kind words. "And I really want to be a father to you too. I'm trying to cope with my problem, but the habit is stronger than me. I didn't drink at all before the accident. I guess it's in my nature to carry a heavy cross." As if she had a premonition of trouble, the girl started asking for Molly. "Mommy, Uncle Andrew, it's too bad. Let's help him. After all, such illnesses are cured today." But her daughter's heartfelt pleas did not touch the woman's heart. She said contemptuously, "I'm not Mother Teresa to save every drunkard. I hate weaklings, and I do not consider such men." A few days after this conversation, Uncle Andrew's things disappeared from the house. For the first time, Kelly sobbed as if a tragedy had happened to her or a loved one. She rushed to her grandmother for help, but she shook her head. "My little girl, I'd love to help you. But Andrew's not from around here. I don't even know where he came from or where he's gone. Maybe she doesn't know. We should ask her." Adriana tried to calm her upset granddaughter. She thought to herself that he was a really good man. Is this Andrew so worried about him? The old woman also thought about the hard fate she had suffered. All her youth, she was tormented by a despotic husband. Then she raised 2 children on her own. And now her daughter's behavior alarms the whole neighborhood. She's like her father, and there's nothing you can do about it. What is it written? You can't change people's behavior all of a sudden. Kelly took Andrew's departure very hard, trying to find any information about him. The girl took her grandmother's advice and went to Nina. But her mother's friend only shrugged her shoulders, and why do you need someone else's uncle? A spineless woman doesn't like that kind of man. Your mother said she never heard from him. Not a word. Andrew always agreed with her, and Kelly was impressed. So he's not a conflicted person. Is that a bad thing? The aunt thought long and hard. You see, a woman is looking for a man who will make her feel like she's behind a stone wall. Andrew deserves all the respect he can get, but he's used to giving in, and he's got a serious sin. But if he had a real family, he'd quit drinking. He didn't say that. That's true. But your mom's not the sacrificial type. Molly's used to taking without giving. I'll try to check with my husband about Andrew's address. Nina's wife worked at the bus depot where Molly temporarily employed her roommate. But as usual, the aunt made a promise and promptly forgot about it. Molly was not used to being alone. Not a year later, she found a replacement for Andrew. Jacob showed up at their house just in time for Christmas. Kelly was setting up the Christmas tree when her mother returned from work, accompanied by a young man. "Daughter, meet Jacob. We work together." The 16-year-old greeted the guest politely and immediately turned a questioning look to her mother. She cheerfully shook the curls on her head. "You guessed it, my dear. Jacob will now live with us." They celebrated New Year's Eve with a new party. Even Nina dropped in with her husband. When all the champagne was drunk and the salads were eaten, the women retired to the kitchen. The mother threw to her daughter, "Aunt Nina and I are going to gossip a little, and you quietly carry the dishes. I don't want to leave it till morning." Jacob behaved relaxed. He sat on the couch with the TV remote control and paid no attention to his stepdaughter. Aunt Nina's husband was snoozing nearby. Kelly took her time clearing the table and occasionally glanced in the direction of her mother's new husband. As the girl with the last load of dirty dishes approached the kitchen, she heard Nina loudly scolding her mother. "Molly, you've completely lost your mind. Completely lost your sense of reality. How old is your Jacob? 26. So if he's not the right guy for you, he's better suited to be your daughter's fiancé. You're about to turn 40. And you do not reduce the materials," objected Nina. "Don't lecture me. You're fine. You're Greg, a respectable family man. But my shore is full of crap. I finally met a normal man. Do you want to use the last words you have for me? Don't you all realize that I want my own piece of happiness too? Who's stopping you? Grab it, but cut your own boughs. And there's such an age difference. What's wrong with that? Next to a young man. And I feel 10 years younger." Adriana didn't approve of her daughter's choice either. Grandma even cried. "What a shame. What will people say about you? He's almost your son." Molly snapped angrily. "I don't give a damn about people. It's my life, and I'm making it the way I want it." Nina reread it. "Now you're a mom, digging my heels in." Adriana took great offense at her daughter and left without saying goodbye. Kelly tried to ignore her mother's roommate. Jacob responded to his stepdaughter in kind. Molly, on the other hand, was kind of glowing. Apparently, love blinded her so much that she once asked her daughter, "Kelly, how do you feel about having a little brother or sister?" Did the girl go numb with the mat too? "That's serious. Why are you so surprised?" "Yeah, Grandma's right. You're really not right in the head. Anyway, do whatever you want. I'll be leaving soon anyway." Molly looked at her daughter with an unkind look, but said nothing. Winter flew by, and then spring was bursting with color. On that May Day, Kelly was going on her first date in her life. Kevin was in his senior year of high school and had invited her out for a boat ride. Her mother was at work, and Jacob was at home as usual. He noticed the girl fidgeting and asked Kelly languidly, "Where are you going?" The girl replied rudely, "What do you care?" The man jumped up to her. "You talk to your elders the way you deserve to be talked to. That's how I talk to you." She wanted to go to her room, but Jacob blocked her way. There was a strange glint in his eyes that really scared the girl. She said loudly, "Let me through, and you ask me nicely. Maybe I'll squeeze you." The man's voice startled Kelly. She forgot about the date and Kevin and ran for the exit. But Jacob caught up with her at the door. He pulled her back and threw her on the couch, and she realized there was no escape. And at that very moment, her grandmother's voice came over her head. "You bastard. Leave her alone, you damn bastard." Something heavy fell on Jacob's back, and he let go of his victim. Adriana clearly did not lose the initiative and continued her offensive with the use of stools. With this piece of furniture, she was hitting her daughter's roommate on the back and other parts of his body with all her might. Jacob Performance yelled, "Get out, your old hag. I'll have the police on you right now for harassment." The elderly woman lowered the object of retribution to the floor and breathed a little. "I'm the one who'll call the police. And you'll go to jail for a long time. And they don't like people like you there. Oh, they don't like you there. Why are you flying? You old fool. There's no place to test your granddaughter. She's had her eye on me for a long time. Molly's just over the threshold. And her little girl's telling me what she's wearing in front of me." Kelly was shaking, and she wasn't thinking straight, but she couldn't stand the dirt Jacob was throwing at her, so she threw a crystal vase at him. Luckily, it flew past his head. Adriana grabbed her granddaughter's hands. "Don't get your hands dirty on that bastard, my dear. God will surely punish him. Come on, let's go to my place. I had a premonition, didn't I? Something was chasing me to you, and before I heard you screaming." While Kelly was packing, Grandma kept her eyes open. Before she left, she told him, "You'd better get out of this house for good. Don't think that everything has ended well for you. We're going to the hospital now to get the beating taken care of. And then to the police." The man yelled, "I didn't do anything to her. I said she hung on to me." Adriana slapped him with all her might. "One more bad word about my granddaughter, and I can't take care of myself. I'm old and I have nothing to lose." This warning had an effect, and Jacob hurriedly left. The nervous upheaval had unpleasant consequences. During the night, Kelly began to pound with fine tremors and very bad pain. Instead of beatings, Adriana twirled around her granddaughter, saying, "Be patient, my good girl." The old woman waited for the girl's mother to show up, but Molly didn't make them happy until the next day. Instead of words of regret, she lashed out at her daughter. "When are you going to stop hurting me at every turn? Why did you play this circus?" She said, "Something you don't know about a man and you." Mom went along with that young adventuress. It was necessary to think of such a thing. They blamed Jacob Adriana, but she said dryly, "If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I might have wondered what you saw. I'm so sick of you both. You're making life difficult for me. As soon as I find a decent man, these two hens interfere and spoil everything." Molly was about to let out a tear, but suddenly Grandma grabbed the mop and chased her to the door. "We've ruined your life. Ah, you hungry snake, get out of here. Ha ha, Lithuania took him away. And I won't spare you." Developed mother traded her own daughter for a roommate. Kelly saw the mother roll to the door and then fall because she couldn't see the threshold. But she was not at all sorry for the parent. On the contrary, she rejoiced in her heart that she had tripped and fallen. This day became for the girl the turning point when hatred overcomes love. Kelly lived at her grandmother's house for the last school year. There was no way to cover up the egregious incident, and soon even teachers learned that the cohabitant of the head of the post office has attacked the stepdaughter. Fearing the consequences, Jacob left the village as soon as possible. Molly's own reputation was also badly damaged. She had been demoted and was now in charge of the sorting department. Of course, it was the victim who suffered the most. The victim herself. Now the river was shunned at school like a leper, and at night she had nightmares for a long time. The girl was looking forward to graduation. She did not go to the graduation, and the certificate was received separately from the rest of the graduates. Adriana comforted her granddaughter daily. "Time heals not such wounds. Trust me, it will all be forgotten." Kelly really wanted to believe in her grandmother's words. "You mustn't leave here, or I'll never forget." "Sure, go to the city to study. I'm still on my feet. And what can I do? I'll help. Do you want to stay at your uncle's house?" "Grandma, I've decided to study hairdressing, and they give dormitories to all foreigners." "That's fine. But you still have Uncle Ben's address. He'll never say no to you." Adriana saw her granddaughter off alone. She looked around a lot, searching for someone with her eyes. Kelly guessed that her grandmother was waiting for her mother to show up. "I don't have a mom anymore." The old woman was astonished. "My little girl, you can't deny your mother like that. You must know how to forgive." "And how can you forgive?" Kelly spoke softly, and there was so much pain in her eyes that she didn't say anything else, but she thought yes. Wounds like that last a lifetime. The driver began to rush the passengers. "Citizens, let's hurry up and load up. I'm on a schedule." Kelly froze on the step when the grandmother with tears in her voice asked her granddaughter, "You at least do not forget me. Visit me once in a while." The girl jumped to the ground and hugged the woman tightly. "I'll never forget you. I'll take you in later when I get settled." Kelly felt her blouse near her blouse. "Grandma, please don't cry. I'll call and write to you." The old woman fussed at Kelly. "I almost forgot. Take your father's Alexa address here. He used to write to me often about you." From above came the driver's disgruntled shout. "Citizens, how long can you try my patience? Everyone close the door and you stay." Adriana literally shoved his granddaughter into the bus. "And my idea is a good one. It's really leaving you here is not a driver some beast." The bus slowly started, but it became fast, picking up speed, and soon disappeared around the corner. But Adriana stood on the platform of the bus station for a long time looking into the distance. Her heart was torn to pieces, but she could not change anything. After the last class, Kelly hurried to the exit, but at the door she ran into Jenna, the head of the group, and considered it her duty to be aware of all the events in the college. That list of priorities also included being very involved in every fellow student's personal life. Jenna tugged on Kelly's sleeve and made scary eyes. "Slow down, and I'm here for you. I didn't know you worked for Mephistopheles." Kelly, also imitating her friend, rounded her eyes. Jenna pulled her back. "Look, I'm being serious. You're making a clown out of this. Anyway, you're required to go to boot camp right away." "Why?" "How should I know? I was asked to give you a message, so I did my part. Straight to the vice principal's office." Kelly headed in that direction, and on the way went over in her mind all the possible reasons for her summons. But none of the theories held up. As soon as she opened the door of the vice principal's office, Cindy rejoiced, "Here, Kelly, it's good of you to come in. I meant to update you back this morning, but things got swirling. Everything slipped my mind." The girl realized that this was only an introduction and waited patiently for the continuation. After an expressive pause, the head teacher spoke in a more casual voice. "I have to inform you, student, that your collection of men's haircuts has been recognized by the jury as the best." Kelly spun around with excitement. "Wow, so I won, yeah. You've added a few points to our college's record of success. And I'm very pleased to have such talent within our walls. But it's not all good news. Newsflash." Cindy winked at Kelly and continued in a half-whisper. "Your series was not just evaluated, but proposed to be included in the Professional Skills Competition program. The event will take place in 2 weeks, so you have very little time to prepare." The joy quickly faded. "And Kelly's gone, Cindy. Why are you upsetting me? I mean, the most famous stylists are going to be there. Who am I against them? How can I compete with the real professionals? And anyway, who would let me participate in such a prestigious competition?" The vice principal was listening to Kelly, and a look of bliss froze on her face. "Sweet girl. In your case, it's not about winning, it's about participating. In any case, you will get a certificate. And this is a very significant argument for a successful start in the profession. In short, right now you write to the Apollo Salon and ask their Martin is the best male master. I've already arranged it with him. He's going to carry you around a little over the next 2 weeks." Kelly was trying to digest this information. The head teacher looked at her with a look of displeasure. "Quiet. Are you still here? Let's get to the salon, 'cause I changed my mind. And you don't have to go to class for 2 weeks." That was probably the best news of all. Kelly ran down the main street of the regional center and felt invisible wings spreading behind her. She wanted to sing and shout with delight, and she could barely contain herself. Only her lips whispered silently, "Kelly, you're doing great. I can't believe this is happening to me. It's fantastic." since the girl left the village where she was born and raised. It had been almost 3 years. And in all that time, Lady Luck had never left her for a moment. A single dot and a cloudless sky in the background. There was an unpleasant residue from the meeting with her own father. Immediately on her arrival, she went to the college and gave her documents. But in the admissions office, she was told that the dormitory would be allocated only after the beginning of the academic year. The girl was in despair because she had no money to stay in a hotel. She would have to ask Uncle Ben for shelter. Kelly mentally imagined the disgruntled face of her uncle, his wife. Suddenly, she remembered the second address. She pulled out of her purse the envelope her grandmother had slipped her before the bus left. Okay, been there, done that. Let's try to visit Daddy. Maybe he won't refuse his daughter. A little Alex couldn't cope with excitement for a long time when the door was opened by an unexpected guest. Probably it was because of confusion that he kept the girl in the hallway for a good 10 minutes. The man, when talking to Kelly, constantly looked back at the door, as if he was afraid that outsiders would hear them. He spoke in a cliff voice. His voice was colorless. Kelly, could you have warned me? I wasn't expecting company, and we were going on a family vacation. I didn't feel like explaining. She said disappointedly, It's hard to live when your mother and father don't need you. Thank you, Papa, for the warm welcome. Tears in 2 thin hands ran down her cheeks. But Kelly did not want her father to see her crying. Grabbing her bags, the girl jumped over the steps and ran down the stairs. She heard her father rushing after her. Kelly, wait, you didn't give me a word to say. Wait. Alex caught up with his daughter on the 2nd floor and snatched the bags out of her hands. You're always such an inadequate girl, screamed. I'm the inadequate one. I thought you'd at least have the decency to pretend you were happy to see me. You didn't even invite me into the apartment. A woman's voice came from the 1st floor. Alex, who are you arguing with? Kelly froze. The man with the look of a conspirator said, This is my wife, Emily. I'm going to get it. A pretty woman who looked no more than 35 years old reached the 2nd floor and began to look at Kelly with interest. Alex about each of them, to make it easier to explain. But Emily made a warning gesture. Wait, Alex, I'll guess it myself. Who is it especially? The girl your eyes is a crease in the corners of the lips is also very familiar. Kelly is your daughter. The guest was amazed at the insight of her father's wife. And the men whispered an explanation as they walked up the stairs. Emily is a psychologist. She is even often invited to consult in criminal investigation and make a psychological portrait of criminals. The woman was the first one upstairs. Alex, you'd better confess at once what happened here, and why are you keeping your guest on the landing? The man gathered his courage. Emily, don't fall down. But in our apartment, a little mess. The woman gave her spouse a disgruntled look. Bob made a mess, and I knew it. The woman jerked open the door, and something white and furry jumped out of the apartment at her. Kelly squealed and rushed toward the stairs again. Oh, Mommy. But her father held her back. Don't be afraid. Bob is still a small and very friendly dog. He's so huge, and I'm scared, no wonder. You've had this fear since you were a baby, when you were very small and you were scared by one not very friendly dog. And you've been afraid of barking animals ever since. That's why I kept you in the hallway so long. I was afraid to scare you with my tendrils. Soon the dog's owner showed up. Kelly's half-brother was 14. At that age, teenagers are characterized by an unstable temperament. Ethan looked at his newfound sister unfriendly, but said nothing. He refused dinner too. Kelly was unpleasantly aware that her appearance had brought discord to Emily. Calmly said, Never mind, Ethan is about the same age as our Bob interrupts, and everyone will act as if Kelly lived in their house all the time. She always spoke calmly. In the few days the girl had lived in their apartment, her father's wife had never once raised her voice. Not even a prank. Bob, the woman, took it with a smile. You're such a prankster. What am I supposed to do with you? Perhaps it was this attitude that made the dog particularly fond of his mistress. He was always hovering near her, begging for tasty treats. The good-natured dog showed interest in guests, but Kelly did not make contact. Therefore, after 3 days of unsuccessful experiments, Alex, with annoyance, noticed the need to attract neighbors. I think, Kelly, that during the vacation you will take care of our pets. You'll also water the flowers here." And Ethan was quick to say, "What the hell? She's a coward, running away from Bob, and he's there for her with all his heart and soul." The girl really wanted to put this young man in his place. "You're a hero, and don't make up stories about me. I'm not afraid of all." "Really, doggy." Bob, he realized his big moment had arrived. First, he lost his legs a little to the girl. Then he got bolder and put his front paws on her shoulders. So that the new acquaintances felt a special favor, Bob licked her face with his rough tongue. Kelly gasped in surprise. She was pleasantly surprised that the first contact with this cute creature had gone without complications and left only positive emotions. She noticed that her father, as well as his wife, were watching the scene anxiously. It was fine. Not even a joke is okay. Emily rubbed the pet's neck and noticed with pleasure. It is not without reason that people say that the wedge is knocked out with a wedge. And fears and phobias should be dealt with in this way. For almost a month, Kelly has been living in her father's apartment. She quickly got used to the new life, and even the fidgety left side seemed to her an old acquaintance. At the beginning of September, classes began at the college, and she repeatedly dropped off an application to the secretary asking for a place in the dormitory. The girls did not refuse, and she was looking forward to returning from vacation from her father's family. But Alex was upset when he learned of his daughter's decision to move into the dormitory. "Kelly lives in a dormitory, allows, and God was already used to you." Emily supported her husband. "Your dad's right, stay." Kelly was ready to agree, but caught Ethan's angry look and realized that the half-brother does not want to share both love and parents. The girl found the most convenient excuse for refusal. "You know, in the dormitory all the girls are together. It is advantageous in the sense that you can, after the lecture, to consolidate practically past material, and clients can be found without problems." The couple agreed. But Kelly lived in the dorm for only 6 months. And then her father got her a cheap apartment. "I wasted so much precious time. My daughter will allow me to make up for it now." Actually, Dad did a lot for Kelly during her college years, and his wife never said a word against it. There may have been some disagreement between them, but Emily never once showed her displeasure. And once the girl caught herself thinking that her father's second wife is much kinder and more responsive than her mother. During all this time, Molly only once visited her daughter, although it was only a 3-hour bus ride to the regional center. Instead of being happy that the ex-husband helps her daughter, the woman said with condemnation, "And you accept handouts from him." The girl asked Mom, "Don't be mad. My father helps me and his wife has never once hurt me, and a bad mother. Is that how you thanked me?" "What should I thank you for?" "For bringing strange men into the house. And one of your roommates almost did something wrong. If it wasn't for Grandma." The past hurts all over again, and Kelly cried. But Molly was in no hurry to comfort her daughter. She wasn't going to apologize to her. "I guess we're not going to have this conversation. I'm going home." Story wanted to see her mother off, but Tanya shouted at her valley to her daddy. "Forget about me, I'll do without you." Overwhelmed by hatred and anger, the woman did not tell her daughter about the serious illness. During a medical examination, doctors discovered she had a liver disease. Kelly learned about her mother's terrible diagnosis from her grandmother, who visited her almost every month. The doctors said Molly had hepatitis, or it was a stroke, and your mother doesn't drink, and only alcoholics get liver failure. That's the story. After Kelly learned of her mother's illness, she tried to fulfill her filial duty, but Molly was offended by the whole world, especially her daughter. She met the girl with reproach. "You're the reason I got sick. You put a curse on your own mother. Go away." The woman did not even let her daughter into the house and slammed the door in front of her. After this incident, Kelly refused any attempts to contact her parents. It was only with her grandmother that Kelly kept in touch. Kelly admired his perfect profile while he pretended to sleep. To bring her lover out into the open, the girl used the tips of her little finger to gently stroke his face. This action did not have the desired effect and had to let go of the market, which unknown from where appeared in the room. Kelly passed it under Martin's nose several times and the man sneezed once. A whole cascade of loud sneezes followed. "I'm going to answer you now." Martin rolled over onto and began tickling the girl. Kelly squealed, trying to break free of his clinging embrace. The couple's amusement was interrupted by the ringing of a cell phone. The man immediately grabbed the gadgets and put his finger to his lips, letting his partner know to be quiet. He tossed carelessly into the receiver. "How many times have I asked you not to bother me for nothing?" "So what?" "So he's cranky." "All kids that age is cranky." "Evelyn, I'll be there when I'm free." "I have a client in the chair." "That's it. I'll call you back later." Kelly, during the phone call, watched the expression on her lover's face cheerful and immediately faded away because there was a sense of invisible presence of Martin's wife. "Martin, it's like your Evelyn is watching you. I've noticed she always calls at peak times." "Yes, she does." "You see, it's no use explaining things to my wife. She's always on her wavelength. And now that she's got ahead, she's really good at it. I'm starting to get nervous about the phone calls. I want to send her away." But Kelly finished the sentence, "You can't, because your Zoe has a very powerful daddy. And if he blinks an eye, you'd be in trouble, wouldn't you?" "I guessed it." Martin patted the girl on the back. "Kitten, you always tell the truth. Don't judge me. I didn't realize getting married would cause me so much trouble. That's because you chose your mate out of love and not out of convenience. If you hadn't married Zoe, she wouldn't have." Martin jumped out from under the covers. "Kelly, you don't have to dream the impossible dream. You and I have talked about this 100 times. I can't deny I have the most positive feelings for you. But you can't put two poor people together. It's only in physics. Adding two minuses makes a plus. Life is different." And Kelly watched as her lover hastily gathered in her heart. The girl had long harbored a grudge against him. And she thought, "Wait, Martin, I'll get back at you one day." "So you say." Of course, aloud she never expressed such thoughts, although she dreamed of teaching her lover a lesson. Martin cleaned himself up and in a casual voice, he asked, "Aren't you going to walk me out?" Kelly replied in the same tone, "No. I don't see the need." The man concluded everything. So she took offense. "Martin, Evelyn is waiting for you." There was a distinct sneer in the young woman's voice. And Martin cursed profanely. A few seconds later, the front door slammed. Not even a kiss. And something really needs to be done about it. And the sooner I get rid of this addiction, the better for both of us. Martin is the weak link in this party. And he's dragging me down with him one day. Kelly uttered this conclusion aloud, but she was perfectly calm. Although before, the mere thought of being separated from Martin had caused her to panic. The secret bond with her estranged husband began to weigh more and more heavily on Kelly. She realized that still one day will have to interrupt the relationship with this man of decisive step. What held her back was a sense of gratitude. After all, Martin had done so much for her. Acquaintance with Martin, in an instant, turned everything in the soul of a naive provincial girl. This handsome style-on-dressed guy was like a Hollywood movie star. When Kelly, on the assignment of the head of the college, went to the salon for a consultation, she did not even assume that her future mentor has such a bright appearance. Upon her appearance, the girl at the front desk languidly pronounced it a men's salon. "You must have the wrong address." Kelly replied cheerfully, "I'm aware of that. I need a master. I'm going to him." The girl said Martin just as sluggishly, but louder. "You are urgently requested from the hall," came an irritated Kathy. "Who's asking for me?" "Some girl." There was no answer. But the master showed up. He was staring at Kelly with interest. She couldn't say a word because her mouth was so dry. At that moment, it seemed to the girl that a spark had passed between them. The young man smiled sweetly. "To what do I owe?" She spoke quickly. "I'm from the college. Cindy called you." The young man, still with the same smile, said, "Yes, she asked me to prepare you." "Well, colleague, come in. Let's not delay. Let's get straight to the lessons." Although the great Salvador Dali claimed that it is not given to man to reach perfection, and with you we will try to do it. During the 2 weeks of training, they became very close. Their relationship could have been called friendship, if not for the proverbial spark that flared up in the first minutes of the meeting. The contest was very successful for the debutante, because the jury awarded her a special prize for the discovery of the year. Of course, the girl did not expect such a result and was full of different feelings. And in this bouquet, the main one was gratitude to her mentor. She tentatively suggested to the master, "If it weren't for you, Martin, I wouldn't have succeeded. This is more your merit than mine. Take it." Kelly wanted to give the envelope with the prize to the man, but was flatly refused. "No, sweet Kelly, I'm not taking the money." "But a light dinner in your company?" The girl was pleased, which I didn't realize. "Now I'll stop by the store and we'll go to my place. Let's celebrate together this great event." Martin asked cautiously, "How will your parents feel about an evening guest?" Kelly laughed. "I live alone. My dad got me a studio apartment when I first started college." "Oh, you have a wealthy father?" No, he's not really rich. He has a little workshop. He and my mom split up when I was 3. Now he's got another family and a wonderful dog named Bob. That's an odd name for a dog. I don't really care for anything furry or feathered." They went grocery shopping together at the supermarket, and Martin paid for the groceries himself. The girl objected to this. "That's not fair, Martin. I'm not supposed to introduce myself to you. You're the one who said I'm the reason you're successful, and stop trying to get me to leave. We're friends, and if you're so anxious to blow your money, you can buy a cake. It would be very symbolic. I don't eat sweets, but for your sake, I'm ready to try a piece of this culinary masterpiece." The man pointed to a miniature-sized cake covered with chocolate icing. However, they never had time to taste the exquisite treat, because after 2 glasses of champagne, Kelly felt both her shyness fall off. Martin was careful and very gentle, and the girl after the first kiss lost her head. It was an unforgettable night, and Kelly wanted it to happen again and again. And Martin wanted it to, and he almost moved into the apartment of his young mistress. The girl already dreamed of a long and happy life together with the man she loved. But one day there was a thunderstorm. After a triumphant debut at the professional skills competition, Kelly was gladly taken to work at the Apollo. Although the girl dreamed of becoming a Dawn Master, she agreed to this option. The reason for her consent was obvious opportunity to be close to Martin. True, in order not to cause among colleagues, crooked lovers decided to work in different shifts. In the evening, they met in the apartment and reveled in each other's company. That evening, Martin arrived later than usual and stayed in the hallway. Kelly immediately noticed that he was not in the mood. "Something's wrong, you're in trouble." The man was silent for a while, and then he barely spoke to Kelly. "You and I need to talk." She smiled and sat down next to him. The girl wanted to hug her lover, but he pulled away from her. "Kitten, not now, and it is unlikely that you will want to hug and kiss me after what I tell you. That would only happen if you were thinking of marrying someone else." There was a heavy sigh as if Martin had been shifting blocks of stone before. "You've hit the mark. I will indeed be a family man soon. But believe me, it's a forced marriage. Evelyn is my fiancée, the daughter of a very powerful man. Her father has promised to help me in my business. I've been wanting to buy out Apollo for a long time." But Kelly could barely contain her emotions. "Martin, you don't have to go any further. I get it. Pack your things and go to the mat." The man tried to calm the girl and let not be heated, because my marriage means nothing. It's just a formality. You and I can go out and have a great time in this cozy nest. And you've even got it all planned out. Did you ask me how I'm not going to get screwed? I'm not comfortable with that. Kelly quickly dumped the lover's things into a large gym bag. "I wish you a happy married life." Martin had to leave the apartment. The next day, Kelly announced her departure from the salon. The owner of Apollo long dissuaded her from this rash step, but the girl insisted on her own. The same day, she found a new job in a women's beauty salon. It remained only to cross out of the life of the lover, but for a long time she did not succeed. Martin called for a week, but she didn't answer. Then the calls stopped. Kelly had a new admirer. Robert was one of the best of the old guard. He was heading the university and is 65, not about to retire. People like a professor value their habits more than anything else. Robert visited the Apollo salon and once fell into the chair of the young Master Kelly. The girl's work was highly appreciated by the elderly lover, and he began to periodically give Kelly different signs of attention. Most often, Robert gave her luxurious bouquets and chocolates, and only once invited together with him to dinner at a restaurant. The girl rashly agreed, and the next day regretted it, because Martin became aware of the new suitor and girlfriend. He descended on Kelly with reproaches and even began to threaten Professor Kelly. "Tell this old goat that if I ever see him near you again, then break the enemy at his age. It is time to lie on the stove and sciatica to treat with gorilla." Kelly did not like this pressure, and she decided to piss off Valley's lover. "You don't own me. It would be very symbolic. I don't eat sweets, but for your sake, I'm ready to try a piece of this culinary masterpiece." The man pointed to a miniature-sized cake covered with chocolate icing. However, they never had time to taste the exquisite treat, because after 2 glasses of champagne, Kelly felt both her shyness fall off. Martin was careful and very gentle, and the girl after the first kiss lost her head. It was an unforgettable night, and Kelly wanted it to happen again and again, and Martin wanted it too, and he almost moved into the apartment of his young mistress. The girl already dreamed of a long and happy life together with the man she loved. But one day there was a thunderstorm. After a triumphant debut at the professional skills competition, Kelly was gladly taken to work at the Apollo. Although the girl dreamed of becoming a Dawn Master, she agreed to this option. The reason for her consent was obvious opportunity to be close to Martin. True, in order not to cause among colleagues crooked lovers, decided to work in different shifts. In the evening, they met in the apartment and reveled in each other's company. That evening, Martin arrived later than usual and stayed in the hallway. Kelly immediately noticed that he was not in the mood. "Something's wrong. You're in trouble." The man was silent for a while, and then he barely spoke to Kelly. "You and I need to talk." She smiled and sat down next to him. The girl wanted to hug her lover, but he pulled away from her. "Kitten, not now, and it is unlikely that you will want to hug and kiss me after what I tell you. That would only happen if you were thinking of marrying someone else." There was a heavy sigh, as if Martin had been shifting blocks of stone before. "You've hit the mark. I will indeed be a family man soon. But believe me, it's a forced marriage. Evelyn is my fiancée, the daughter of a very powerful man. Her father has promised to help me in my business. I've been wanting to buy out Apollo for a long time." But Kelly could barely contain her emotions. "Martin, you don't have to go any further. I get it. Pack your things and go to the mat." The man tried to calm the girl and let not be heated, "Because my marriage means nothing. It's just a formality. You and I can go out and have a great time in this cozy nest. And you've even got it all planned out. Did you ask me how I'm not going to get screwed? I'm not comfortable with that." Kelly quickly dumped the lover's things into a large gym bag. "I wish you a happy married life." Martin had to leave the apartment. The next day, Kelly announced her departure from the salon. The owner of Apollo long dissuaded her from this rash step, but the girl insisted on her own. The same day, she found a new job in a women's beauty salon. It remained only to cross out of the life of the lover, but for a long time she did not succeed. Martin called for a week, but she didn't answer. Then the calls stopped. Kelly had a new admirer. Robert was one of the best of the old guard. He was heading the university and is 65, not about to retire. People like a professor value their habits more than anything else. Robert visited the Apollo salon and once fell into the chair of the young Master Kelly. The girl's work was highly appreciated by the elderly lover, and he began to periodically give Kelly different signs of attention. Most often, Robert gave her luxurious bouquets and chocolates, and only once invited together with him to dinner at a restaurant. The girl rashly agreed, and the next day regretted it, because Martin became aware of the new suitor and girlfriend. He descended on Kelly with reproaches and even began to threaten Professor Kelly. "Tell this old goat that if I ever see him near you again, then break the enemy at his age. It is time to lie on the stove and sciatica to treat with gorilla." Kelly did not like this pressure, and she decided to piss off lover. "You don't own me." And then for a man, age is no object. And Robert was still quite Martin, and his eyes were spinning wildly. And she's already slept with him. Admit it, it was the first time the girl saw Martin in such a state. For a moment, she even became afraid, and she tried to extinguish the conflict. You have only one thing on your mind to tumble in bed. But people can just meet because they are interested in each other. The professor's traveled the world. He's a fascinating storyteller. And he's not the kind of man who's used to going out with women. He has a beautiful wife and 2 grown-up children. His son is even 10 years older than me, so your jealousy is unfounded. Martin calmed down a little and was no longer so painfully tolerant of the professor's advances to his girlfriend. But when he announced his decision to marry Evelyn, Kelly immediately thought of Robert. She was the first to call her regular client and set up a meeting in a cafe that was not far from the new place of work, so that Robert would not suspect that he was a means of revenge in the hands of a young manipulative woman. Kelly spent a good half an hour telling him about her desire to get a higher education. The professor was instantly imbued with the idea. Kelly, this is the right decision, and I am ready to help you on the path of knowledge. Robert spoke inspirationally, and the girl eagerly agreed with him. Yes, yes, Robert, I really hope for your support. I'm practically an orphan. I have no father. My mom is terminally ill. Kelly lied selflessly. The professor gently stroked her hands. My poor girl, how much have you been through? You know, I'd be willing to tutor you personally on weekends. No one's been at our cottage since the fall. It didn't take long for the singer to beg. I must say that Robert, despite his rather venerable age, was very attractive as a man. He always wore a fresh shirt. He wore branded shoes and expensive suits. Of course, Kelly was most bought off by expensive gifts. The professor very gently moved from bouquets to jewelry. That was the first time Kelly had ever had a funny thought in her head. Let him be old. But he gives gifts. In 2 years, Martin's given 1 bunch of roses and a cheap toilet water. He keeps crying that he doesn't have enough for his own clothes. Individual sessions at the professor's dacha began with a romantic candlelight dinner and smoothly moved into the bedroom. And Kelly was again pleasantly impressed by the professor's masculine strength. Taking the shower, the girl whispered yes. Robert will still put any young man in 2 counts. Had lived to tell the tale. He'd easily put one under his belt. Dacha weekends continued throughout the fall. The professor showered his young sweetheart with gifts and once confessed, Kelly, you have breathed the second youth into me, and I intend to give you another gift. The man took out a velvet case from a huge pocket, and the girl thought it was another piece of jewelry. But the professor pressed an invisible button, and when the lid opened, Kelly saw the keys. She exclaimed in surprise, Robert, what is it? The man was pleased that he had managed to impress his young mistress. They are the keys to your own apartment. My relatives know nothing about this property, which I inherited from my uncle long ago. I confess that for a time this living space served as a place for conspiratorial meetings, so to speak. The professor laughed at his good joke, and then added, I think that after a little renovation, you can move into your new place, where I'll visit you occasionally. Kelly looked at the gray-haired man and thought that he looked so decent. But in reality, he's a womanizer. She carefully took the key box and held it to her chest. Thank you. But honestly, I didn't deserve such an expensive gift. You'll have time to make me happy. Robert brought the deed to the apartment with the keys. My gold, it's all in your name. No one can touch it. But no sooner had Kelly moved into her new apartment than Martin showed up again. The young man didn't look his best and swore to his fate. And you have no idea. It's only been 6 months, and it feels like an eternity. I don't know how much longer I can go on. Sometimes I get so depressed, I want to jump off a bridge into the water. Don't send me away with pity. The girl silently listened to this confession of the former lover and felt how the smoldering fire in her heart again ignites. She did not know what to do, to tell Martin that his place was already taken by another. She couldn't, but it wasn't in her plan to date 2 men at the same time. Putting stereotypes aside, Kelly decided to leave it at that, especially since she couldn't rely on Martino anymore. On weekends, she went with the professor to the villa. Martin said she was going to visit her grandmother. The meetings with her former lover took place for several months in a rented apartment because the professor's employees were renovating the new place, and Robert often went there. She found a special charm in the double life. She wanted her love affair to last as long as possible. But Martin was off the hook for the second time, and she decided that she had had enough. Let them entertain their wife, but for his meanness, I'll be sure to take revenge on him. Kelly called her father and told him that she no longer needed to rent a place to live. Alex did not ask too many questions, and Kelly even seemed pleased. "Okay, daughter, I'll let the landlord know tomorrow. Tell me, when can I pick up the keys?" Right now." The day before, Kelly had moved all her furniture and belongings into her new apartment. Her greatest fear was that Martin wouldn't show up at this critical moment, so she decided to wait for her father in the driveway. Alex arrived with Ethan. The half-brother sat behind the wheel and waved to her, and she waved back. Somewhere far away, just under her heart, something tingled, no matter how you look at it. I didn't fit in with my father's family, so to speak. Alex took the keys, and as a farewell, he wished you good luck with your daughter. "If you need money or other help, call me. We're not strangers." She promised to call regularly. And when the car with the relatives left, I thought, "No, Dad, we're not strangers." Despite the same set of genes, but I'm still grateful for everything you've done for me. The day after we moved in, Martin called and complained again. "Kelly, can I come over?" "No, Martin. We have to stop seeing each other. You're about to be a happy father, and I don't want to ruin your family. Oh, by the way, how's your salon?" There was a long silence on the other end, and the girl even thought there was a problem with the connection. But Martin finally realized what Kelly was asking him. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize what salon we were talking about. My father-in-law screwed me over with promises. He says he doesn't have any money to spare, like all the capital's on the move. But I know it's all excuses. I want to take a loan from the bank, but the amount is large and I'm sure he will approve it." Martin went on and on about his father-in-law. Kelly got tired of listening to him and turned off her cell phone. "My darling is all over the mess he's made. He wants a rich bride. Sign here and sign here. Girl." Still a lot of unflattering words expressed in the address of the former lover. And in her head almost ripened a plan of elegant revenge. On her next date with the professor, the girl started talking about her future from afar. "Robert, there's a lot of action around, and I'm stuck in a beauty parlor." The man looked at the girl with interest. Well, and what are you dissatisfied with my princess?" Kelly pouted capriciously. "Don't you get it? I'm tired of working for someone else. I want to work for myself." "Good call. What are you missing?" The girl started dreaming like a window. "Why do you ask such stupid questions? You know the answer perfectly well." Robert paused for a moment and then asked in a very businesslike manner, "How much do you need to realize your dream?" The girl desperately waved her hands. No, honey, you misunderstood me. I only want to borrow for a while, say for 3 years. I want to buy the Apollo Men's Salon. It's not doing so well, and the owner's going abroad. What's the asking price?" Kelly named the price. Robert raised his eyebrows in surprise, then smiled. "Do you women know how to get what you want out of us? Fresh tomorrow with the owner of the salon. I'll have a word with her myself. I'm pretty good at this sort of thing. But in my opinion, the lady's charging too high a price. I think I can bring this lady back down to earth. My lawyer will do the proper paperwork, because these law firms are used to charging people a lot of money." Kelly looked at her patron with admiration and whispered, "Robert, how kind you are. I'll give you every penny. Let me write you a receipt." The man cringed. "There's no need for a receipt. You'll give it back when you get the chance." A week later, all the documents for the salon were in Kelly's hands. The new owner now had to decide which of the old staff to keep, with whom to part. In the list of candidates for dismissal, at number 1 was Martin. Before permanently leaving the salon, where he had worked for more than 10 years, Martin decided to talk to his former lover. The man duly knocked, and without waiting for an invitation, entered the office. "Kelly, why are you doing this to me? What have I done to you? It was I who brought you into the world, and you repaid me with black ingratitude. I didn't expect that from you. But God sees everything from above, and your boomerang is already in flight." The woman listened to her opponent and with a serious look, said, "Martin, and appreciated your speech. But you shouldn't have gotten so worked up about gratitude. Martin, between us girls, you've taken full advantage of me for so many years. After all, you weren't shy about passing my ideas off as your own. So it remains to be seen who should thank whom. The man looked angrily at his new mistress and walked away with his head down low. Kelly, I thought, another page of her life book has been read all the way through. Now she needs to turn it over and put the unpleasant moments behind her. After finally breaking up with the welder, Kelly realized that it was time for her to build her own happiness rather than bask in the fire of others. On the second day after the funeral, Kelly decided to clean up the house a bit. But in the middle of the process, the restless Nina showed up and yelled as soon as she opened the door. "What are you doing? Stop that right now. You're not supposed to clean. Just yesterday, the groupies took it out." Kelly was getting tired of being told what to do by this woman. "Aunt Nina, why are you yelling? Are you here for business or just to chat? Kind of business. And I'm here about selling the house." Kelly interrupted impatiently. "I think we've had this conversation before. I'm not selling anything. It's a nice house. My father built it. Why didn't he come to the funeral? What kind of a stupid question is that? He didn't want to come. The man has another family, and no one obliged him." The girl tried to speak calmly, but irritation was rising hotly within her. So she changed from a calm tone to a more raised voice. "Nina, I've been trying to understand for 2 days. Where did you get such an interest? Why are you meddling in someone else's house with your own rules? I'm not giving you advice. I just want to be alone right now and think. And you've been here since early morning." Nina ran out the door like a scalded man. Outside, she stood in the middle of the courtyard and announced that she's a businesswoman, and it's not known where you earned a salon and a separate apartment. You're just like your mother. The girl barely fought the urge to jump out into the street and hit this insolent aunt from the bottom of her heart, but she immediately imagined how wild that scene would look. All day, Kelly tried to distract herself from the funny thoughts, but a warning light bulb went off in her brain and lit up. The last phrase Nina had thrown out had gone all motherly. Kelly tried to reassure herself that her life was drastically different from the image her late parent had held. And the main difference is that she, Kelly, does not cause grief to anyone, because she has no children yet. At the thought of her own children, it became hard for her to breathe, and she whispered depressed, "And these are right about something. And I do run the risk of repeating Mom's fate. It's time to end it. I need to build my family with this." Thoughts of a peaceful future warmed the young woman's heart all the way back. That's why she even forgot that her fridge was empty. The clock showed 10:45, and the woman from her seat shouted, "Comrade driver, stop, please," at the grocery store. The man, with feigned seriousness, said it's not allowed. "We'll get to the bus station and then go where you want. But by the time we get there and then come back, everything will be closed. Uncle, please." The driver grinned. "My niece talked me into it." The bus jumped out, jerked, and Kelly almost fell out of its empty gut. The store was as empty as the interior of the bus. Later, a customer began hastily tossing groceries into a basket at the far racks. The cashier loudly appealed to the customer ladies, "Hurry up, otherwise you will not be able to pay." The women simultaneously rushed as the only working cashier and in the turmoil collided. The stranger began to apologize, and Kelly echoed her. The cashier became indignant. "What's going on here? Is this a space communication session?" "I said the store is closing." The stern cashier reminded Kelly of a strict kindergarten nanny. She threatened kids who were disturbing the others' sleep that she'd turn them in bulk for recycling. This threat worked, and the children in their group were terrified of glassware and other waste. Later, when the older children took part in the cleanup day, they were given the task of picking up some litter. One boy asked the educator, "Are the bad kids over, or are they no longer accepted instead of bottles?" The teacher was numb with surprise initiative nanny, who came up with an original means of intimidating children. At first, they wanted to fire her, but then they left her because she was a valuable employee. Memories of that childhood incident lifted her spirits a bit, and Kelly really wanted to share some positive emotions with at least someone, since the streets were deserted, The talkative cashier practically pushed them stranger out of the door. She decided to talk to a friend in distress to create a favorable ground. Kelly told the woman about the resourceful babysitter laughed so long and then thanked her. "Thank you for making me laugh," and that my mood is completely at zero and was not in the habit of climbing into people's souls, and waited patiently for the stranger to add something else to this message. And her premonition did not fail her. The woman looked at her with hope. "My name is Vera." But I stopped believing in all good things a long time ago. The bag was pulling her hand away, but Kelly tried not to let on that she was distracted. She said with interest, "You know, a wise man said, you have to believe even when you're standing on the edge of a cliff." Betty happily picked up on that. "That's exactly the kind of place I'm in right now. I don't want to bore you with my complaints. Yeah, you're probably not interested. You know, sometimes it's more helpful to confide in a stranger than a friend. The only inconvenience is that it's cold outside. Don't take my suggestion for impudence, but why don't we come to my place and have a chat?" Betty began to nod her head very vigorously. "I'd be happy to accept your offer, especially since I don't feel like going home right now. I've had a big fight with my husband. Let them suffer a little, because he thinks only of himself. I'll let you in on a secret, Betty. Most men are like that. So your spouse is not an abnormal specimen." 0:00. The women sat in the kitchen, while Kelly heated the kettle 5 times. And rambling. "You told your new pal." She realized that Betty had made a big mistake in choosing a life partner. "I always thought that people from the world, big sports, and in ordinary life are kind and sociable. But my spouse showed such qualities only at the stage of groomsman. You know, he admitted on the second day after the wedding that he married me for the sake of his career. My father, unfortunately, he is no longer alive. He was a rector at the university. To my misfortune, he saw in my chosen one a promising manager. Of course, it was about the distant future, but my husband really wanted to speed up the process. Anyway, after our wedding, he started intrigues behind my father's back, which drove my father to the grave." Kelly decided to ask a question. "Why do you put up with such a scoundrel? Divorce and a maiden name." "Betty, you gave him a big smile. I kept my last name anyway. He has a very distinguished pedigree. He's obsessed with that point. After Daddy died, he made me sign over all my papers to him." Kelly even started hiccuping in surprise. "I'm not a legal professional, but this was the first time I'd ever heard of forcing someone to sign something against their best interests." Betty looked away. "My husband kept me locked up for almost a week and wouldn't let me drink. It was horrible. And to end the torment, I signed all the papers his lawyer brought. Now I'm completely at his mercy in the event of a divorce. I lose everything. In any case, I have no rights. But that's impossible. You just don't know my husband. He's a former boxer, even a champion. To be honest, I'm afraid of him. I have a neurosis or something like that. But my husband says I'm an inveterate faker." Kelly really wanted to help this poor woman. She looked up Emily's number in her phone book. "Betty, I can give you the number of a very good counselor. She's my father's second wife. She's very good. She'll be very helpful." The guest hesitated again. "I'll try to remember. My husband checks my mail and calls regularly. I don't want to cause any unnecessary trouble for myself." It wasn't until the morning that the guests hurried home. Kelly volunteered to walk her home. "I'm worried about you. God forbid your husband starts getting handsy. Then I'll feel guilty." The woman smiled weakly. "He chooses more subtle methods for me. But he's never hit me. At 500 am, he's scheduled to jog. If I can get there by then, he won't change his schedule for me. And then he'll cool off." It was with a heavy heart that Kelly saw her new acquaintance off. For some reason, she thought the woman would come back soon. But a day passed, then a week, and Betty didn't call. Kelly began to gradually forget about that meeting in the store and the sleepless nights that followed. Then the events of her own life swirled around the young woman in their own turbulent maelstrom. Not even a year after her mother's untimely death, Adriana's grandmother died. Kelly had not fully recovered from this loss. How had Professor Robert passed away? Robert's death was a severe blow to the girl. When this kind man was gone, Kelly realized that she sincerely did not love him. There was a void in her heart that had nothing to fill. The only consolation was work, because the professor had provided everything in advance, and his relatives never once disturbed Kelly, who remained not only good memories of lovers, but also an apartment and a salon. To distract herself from the grief of clear thoughts, Kelly directed all her energy to the development of business. She analyzed the results of the salon for the past 2 years and came to the conclusion that it is urgent to change the concept of the institution itself. To that end, the owner hired experts in the field who recommended expanding services to the target audience. When Kelly reviewed the list of suggestions, she gasped, "Guys, this is a men's salon. And you've included hand massages, pedicures, wraps, blow drying. I mean, that's a huge expense. And I doubt those treatments will be in demand, so they won't pay for themselves." David, the young manager, said, "You shouldn't say that. It's not like we're making this up from scratch. It was the first thing that came to mind. We looked at the demand first. I have to tell you, Kelly, you have a misconception of modern men, don't you? So a normal man, especially in the business world, will always pay attention to his appearance." The owner of the salon for some time still hesitated, then agreed with the manager's creative solution. After only 3 months of work, she was forced to admit that David made the right prediction. Profits began to grow and the flow of customers increased. Kelly decided to thank her assistant and invited him to her office. When David showed up and started looking for a place to land, the hostess solemnly said, "David, I take my hat off to you." The guy was finally confused and began to look around gingerly. It looked funny, and Kelly laughed. "Don't worry, I won't eat you. On the contrary, I want to offer you the position of my deputy. How would you like that?" David smiled. "If it's not a joke, it's positive. I'm not in the habit of making jokes in the workplace." "Then you and I have a deal." The guy's excited. "Yeah, sure, yeah. I didn't even see that coming. If this keeps up, I'll be able to start my own business soon." "Thank you." The young man sprinted to the door. The woman watched this uncontrollable burst of joy with a smile. She suddenly thought that she would like to jump like this guy. After all, she was only 4 years older than David. To feel like an ancient old woman next to him. And once again, the thought flashed through my brain. I have to make some changes in my life. Otherwise, I'm turning into a blue stocking or even worse, a beard of the same color. Having made such conclusions, Kelly decided that constant contact with a young and very promising employee would benefit not only the business, but also her personally. A little more time passed, and the owner of the salon realized that she was not mistaken in the young specialist. David was full of energy. In addition to his direct duties, he also served clients, because he had a certificate of massage therapist. Kelly was already happy to change the black stripes to white, as a small black carcass appeared in the cloudless sky, and the culprit of the trouble turned out to be her deputy, David. The essence of the incident was that, according to one very capricious client, the master performed poorly massage. A man with a budding hedgehog on his head made a scandal right in the big hall. Apparently, he wanted to attract the attention of other customers, and he succeeded. Some eyewitnesses began to film what was happening on their smartphones. A disgruntled client shouted, "Your master doesn't understand anything about massages. He almost made a cripple out of me. I'm not going to let this go." The moment Kelly jumped out of her office, the threats began. The owner of the establishment approached the man and in a calm voice said, "Stop your hysterics. And if you threaten my employees, I will call the police. Witnesses will confirm that you promised, for example, the monsieur to hang on the nearest birch tree and then tear off his hands without anesthesia." Calm speech. The woman had an effect on the aggressively inclined comrade, and he immediately quieted down. After that, Kelly invited him and David into her office. "Let's go quietly. Let's get things sorted out." In the course of the proceedings, it became clear that the man had numerous injuries, but did not bother to warn the master to finally put the matter to rest. The owner of the salon put the rules of service on the table in front of the scandalist. He read the text for a long time. Then he said, "I didn't realize your place took such a serious approach. I'm sorry. I admit my guilt. Is there anything I can do for you?" The man handed David his business card. I'm currently head of the Department of Sports Medicine, and I can help with employment. David declined the offer. Thank you, but I'm happy with the job. The client apologetically said goodbye. Kelly and the master remained silent for a long time. When the shock of the client's conversation had receded a little, David said thoughtfully a man in such a position should know at least a little about medicine. Trevor Jones. The name was painfully familiar. The young man squeezed his eyes shut hard, but almost immediately shouted it accurately. It's a former boxer. If memory serves me correctly, he was even a champion. It seemed that was the end of the incident. But the next day, the former boxer again appeared in the salon. The man went straight to the office of the director, which surprised Kelly. He first handed her a bouquet of burgundy roses, and then long and lengthy apologized. The woman could not wait to say goodbye to the annoying client, but she tried to be polite so as not to provoke a new scandal. After the tedious speech, Mr. Trevor disappeared, but the next day he reappeared. David was the first to notice the visitors and warned the landlady. I think that boxer's got his eye on you. If it's too much trouble, call him. They were wearing a good suit, and he himself radiated an inexhaustible energy. Very confident, if not cocky. He invited Kelly to dinner. It's been 24 hours. I feel morally uncomfortable for the damage I've done to you, and I'd like to do something for you personally. Kelly, something nice. I've given it a lot of thought, and I've come to the conclusion that the best thing is dinner at a nice restaurant. The woman began to think of an elegant way to refuse, but Trevor beat her to it. Surprisingly, the evening passed in a pleasant atmosphere, and at the end of the dinner, Trevor no longer seemed to Kelly so unpleasant and intrusive as it was at the beginning of acquaintance. Gradually, meetings with this man became constant, and Kelly imperceptibly assessed the admirer as a potential candidate for a husband. Trevor assured her that he was almost free. About his wife, the man said only that she has poor health, and therefore she cannot cope with even basic housework, not to mention the fulfillment of marital duty. You see, Kelly, I am a healthy man, and I have natural needs. But my wife is always complaining about not feeling well or disappearing from the house altogether. What am I supposed to do in this situation? Although Kelly was not a nun, but talking about such topic made even her blush. But the new admirer was getting more and more persistent every day. Kelly, and I dream of the day when you and I can be one. You see, I'm going through a very difficult time right now, and you can help me through it. All right, Trevor, I'll help you. But what do I have to do that? Don't say no to me for a while. I've missed a real woman so much. I'm just burning with impatience. A beacon went off inside, and Kelly decided to limit herself to promises. Trevor, I want a normal relationship too, but you have a wife. She and I have already worked it out. She agrees to a divorce, but we'll have to wait 2 months for the story. But we're adults, and we don't have to meet deadlines. My wife's going away for 2 days tomorrow. She's been seeing a lot of quacks. It's a waste of money. In short, tomorrow we can have a magical evening at my place. You're looking at it. I'll take it. As long as your wife is really gone. You don't believe me? Resentment echoed in the man's voice, and Kelly agreed to a secret rendezvous at his apartment. During their acquaintance, Trevor told her a lot about himself. He told her in detail about his sports career and about the terrible injury that forced him to leave the sport. He also talked about his unsuccessful marriage to the girl who was his brightest admirer. He did not hide the story with his father-in-law, who set him up and did not want his son-in-law to work in the same school. But the whole story of Trevor's life boiled down to the fact that at every turn he was under the shenanigans of his enemies. And as a result, he was the unhappiest man on the planet. Previously, Kelly had not met such a hurtful personality and therefore did not know how to behave with Trevor. She still hoped that she could build a quiet family life with this man and agreed to a date in his apartment. Kelly was struck by the luxury of Trevor's dwelling. In fact, the apartment was a symbiosis of 2 adjacent apartments. Therefore, it was easy to get lost here. The guests were overwhelmed by the experience. Trevor tried to speed up the process and after the first glass of champagne offered coffee. For this evening, I am at your complete disposal. And now, I think, it's time to make a little excursion. He started to kiss many women and began to shower them with kisses. But at that time, the front door slammed. The man ran in excitement. "It's my wife back. I'll quickly escort her now." Light footsteps were heard and Betty entered the room. Kelly immediately recognized her overnight guest, but didn't let on. The hostess stared at her for a moment and then stared at a point in the ceiling. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I had a very bad time coming back." Kelly immediately scrambled up. "Thanks, Trevor." For a pleasant evening, the man rushed after her. "Kelly, wait, I'll walk you out. I shouldn't be too far away." Kelly saw the way Betty was looking at her. The sight of this woman was truly unsettling, and she had a renewed desire to help her. She wasn't surprised when she met Faith the next morning outside the driveway. The woman was pale and had blue circles under her eyes. "Kelly, I apologize for the early visit, but yesterday was awkward. If I'd known he was with you, I certainly wouldn't have come." "You're the one I need to apologize to, Betty. I never expected Trevor to be your husband. He said he was going through a divorce and gave such a description of his wife that it's impossible to find anything in common with you, Betty, belittling. I looked it up and I apologize again, but I really don't feel well. I've been going crazy the last few weeks. I wouldn't be surprised if my hubby put something in my food." Kelly exclaimed, "Let's go up to my place. I have some ideas. You know, I've been thinking about you all night." "Oh, come on. Don't you have enough problems of your own? And anyway, it's a time when everyone's thinking about themselves." "Maybe so, but my grandmother taught me to help my neighbors. And my mom had a completely different life theory, but I prefer my grandmother's attitude. Kelly, I don't know why, but I trust you completely." "I guess I don't have any good options, only bad ones left." They took the elevator to the floor where Kelly lived and continued their conversation in her apartment. "Betty, I suggest you teach your husband a lesson he'll remember for the rest of his life. Of course, that's up to you. I'll do it. Just tell me what you want me to do." Kelly placed the tea on the checkers and said in a casual tone, "Nothing special will be required of you. Neither will I. We'll just put on a little show, after which Trevor will be out of your life forever." "Is that possible?" "It's possible, and without much effort." Kelly filled the unhappy woman in on her plan, and Betty wondered as she told her story. When Kelly stopped talking, the guest looked at her with admiration. "Kelly, you're a genius. I can't believe I didn't think of this before. And when we put our plan into action, right after you've been examined, it's possible that your adoring husband really did use some kind of chemo to get rid of you. After all, he's a former athlete and knows a lot about drugs. Go to the clinic right now and don't call back." Kelly slipped her friend the keys at the door and went straight through the village. "You'll find my house easily and try not to contact anyone. If anyone asks, just say that you are an apartment." Trevor begged with pleasure because he had not expected that his new girlfriend would suddenly take the initiative to solve his problem. They were sitting in a bar, and Kelly was sluggishly sipping a cocktail. "You know, you got me all excited." Suddenly, your wife shows up. The man was sweating from the exertion. "Kelly, believe me, I didn't see it coming. She's getting on my nerves. I don't know how to get rid of her any faster. Just yesterday, she told me she changed her mind about getting a divorce. But that's not all. She started to claim I cheated and robbed her. How about that?" Kelly pouted her lips. "It's a load of crap. What kind of man is that? How can you be a criminal? You're the man for the job, and your wife's a bitch. Maybe you should take more drastic measures against her." Trevor's tense. "What do you mean?" The woman rolled her eyes. "You're such a baby. You said yourself she's all sick. Ban her to some hospital or that won't solve the problem. Well, then we could take her out or give her sleeping pills and throw her in the lake. No problem." He looked at her with a trying look. After a long pause, he asked, "Are you ready to help me?" Did she whisper? "Of course I am. You will share with me, won't you?" "I want to expand my enterprise, and I have another establishment in mind that I want to buy." Trevor even choked on his beer. "You're cynical. You're a role model." Trevor and caught his wife in bed. Betty was pale. When she saw her husband, she tried to sit up in bed. "Darling, I felt worse today. I even wanted to go to the hospital to give blood." The man froze in the middle of the room. "Why?" What else you got in mind? You get some nonsense in your head and you change. No glue. And I've read that it's a symptom of poisoning from drugs used by athletes. Kleenex hit the closet with all his might. You're out of your mind. You're implying something. But Trevor, think about it. I don't have to think. The man started pacing around the room. You want to go to the hospital. Can you go? He roughly tore his wife out of bed. Let's move. Get dressed. I'll fix you up in a jiffy. Betty whispered. Trevor, please don't. Don't take it out on him. But he was no longer taken in by his wife's pleas. Trevor was also rude, pushed the half-dressed woman out the door and went out himself. He pushed his wife into the back seat and got behind the wheel himself. You're going to fix Betty very quickly. I'm sick of all your shenanigans. I need a normal woman, not a walking butterfly. Where are we going, Wedge? The man didn't answer. He drove the car down the road Kelly had pointed him in the direction Kelly had pointed him the day before. Betty sat in the back seat, watching the road through open eyes. In her right hand, she clutched the key to the house where she would be staying for a few days. When the car pulled up to the abandoned farmhouse, Betty was unconscious. Her husband hurriedly pulled her out of the sack into the ruined building. Here, my dear, you will undergo a course of unconventional treatment. The woman heard a car pull away. She wrapped herself in a shawl and wandered down the road to where the village alone was burning. She was tired and cold by the time she reached the place, but it was as if her mind had cleared up. Apparently, it was the clean and rustic air that did that to her. Just as Kelly had said, she immediately found the large house from the description. And from the looks of it, no one was in it. Still a little hesitant, Betty cautiously tried to insert the key into the lock and wonder. It opened the door with a quiet click. The woman was not very familiar with village life. I was expecting to see almost benches, but I fumbled for the light switch and pressed it and froze in amazement. A very modern, beautiful house. She walked through the rooms, saw the folded blankets on the couch. She didn't even think about anything else. Decided that she would think about everything tomorrow, but tonight she would just go to sleep well at the cat's house. Betty drifted off to sleep. She got up in the morning, feeling quite awake and rested, so needing to remember everything Kelly had told her about. The first thing to look for in the closet on the third shelf is her phone and money, all of which she immediately found and turned on the gadget. Almost immediately the phone rang. Betty, yes, Kelly, everything is fine. Kelly said quite contentedly, see, we've got it all worked out. Betty, you take care of things there. You should have enough money for now. Don't whistle too much. You realize it takes time. I can't solve this place in a day. Kelly, I can't thank you enough. You know, it's kind of weird. It's like a husband's mistress helping his wife. But we're going to break the stereotype. Kelly, there's one more thing. I did take all the tests, and they'll be ready tomorrow. I told the doctor I'm going on vacation, and my sister's coming to pick them up. I understand. I'll be sure to pick them up. Tell me, do you still think it's Trevor? Yes, I'm almost certain of it. But if he does, he'll regret it. All Betty will settle in there. By the way, find the pantry. There's an ample supply of pasta, sand, and other foodstuffs. Thank you, Kelly. That's it. I'll call myself when I can. Kelly hung up the phone and smiled predatorily. But all of it would definitely help her faith. And for herself, she wouldn't become like her mother. Kelly put the phone down on the table and thought for a moment. Now it was necessary not to make a mistake. It's bad enough that she's all alone. She had to play the part and think about the next steps. Kelly, it's okay. A smiling David stood on the doorstep. Kelly, when she saw her assistant, realized that her mood always improved dramatically. Sure, David, come on in. How many times can I ask you to just call me Kelly? I'm not 60. David got embarrassed, sat down in a chair. But the chain of command. There's no chain of command. You're my deputy, not an ordinary employee. So let's just get on with it. I will. And I will. Kelly. Kelly, I'm here on business. The thing is, it's my birthday in 3 days, and I'd like to invite you to you. In general, I would like to celebrate it with you. Kelly looked at him in surprise. David is embarrassed. This is a man from whom ideas spurted out like a cornucopia, And he, who has earned those moments of enthusiasm, can send anyone who gets in his way. That's new. Who else would it be? And David looked her straight in the eye and blurted out, "No one." That's when Kelly almost fell off her chair. How could she understand such an invitation? She tried to answer as gently as possible. "David, you and I are adults, and I think you'll understand. At other times I would have agreed, but now I can't. I have so much on my plate that I don't know how to deal with it." David has picked himself up. "Kelly, you just say the word and I'll help you. You can't do everything all by yourself. It's a woman's duty to be beautiful, and the rest is a man's responsibility." Kelly looked at David with a smile. "Well, that's what you think while you're young. And then you'll think differently about mothers." David jumped up, "And I'm only 4 years younger than you. But for some reason you always think of me as a child." Kelly looked at her assistant in surprise. It was true that she thought David was a beautifully young boy. "David, let's not fight over nothing. My problems have nothing to do with work. I promise you, as soon as I have a little more time, I'll go out with you." David silently walked out, and Kelly was left feeling upset, as if she had just made a very big mistake. She had a meeting with Trevor in an hour. She should be well prepared. Trevor was very excited. "Kelly, I've got it all worked out, and I didn't doubt you. To be honest, we need to wait a little while and file a search warrant. Hopefully she'll be squinting by then." "Trevor, you're not considering the possibility that your spouse might escape?" "Well, of course not. When I pulled her out of the car, she was already unconscious. It's freezing outside." "What are you talking about? Don't worry, I'm just saying." Trevor looked at her with glittering eyes. "Kelly, I want you to come to my place. But no, I don't want to be where your wife's spirit might be." "Why don't you come to my place?" Trevor wasn't as perfect as he made himself out to be. At least he was far less so than he'd been in the novel. Kelly pulled himself back. It wasn't enough to compare all of his lovers. Several months passed. Trevor was tired of knocking on doors to have his wife declared dead. Don't you realize that a missing person must have been dead for at least 5 years? And in your case, it's not even 6 months. But she was sick. A lot of people can attest to that. It doesn't matter. It would be different if a body had been found. But there wasn't. He slammed the office door in despair, and he needed his freedom. He really wanted to marry Kelly. Trevor realized that Kelly was not like his wife Kelly, strong and independent. And he really wanted to conquer this fortress. Just because they were sleeping together, there were no guarantees. He was well aware that the young woman could slip away at any moment. Kelly was sitting in her office when David walked in without knocking. She raised her eyebrows in surprise, but her deputy silently put a piece of paper in front of her and wanted to leave. Kelly ran the sheet through her eyes, an application for dismissal. "David, stop," he paused. "But maybe you can explain what's going on." "There's nothing to explain. It's just that I've decided to quit." "But why?" "Am I not paying you enough? Let's talk. I'll give you a raise. You don't have to." David didn't look at her, and Kelly suddenly found out, "Are you out because I refused to go to the restaurant with you?" He grinned wryly. "Not exactly." "Then I don't understand." David stepped forward, "And they're only claiming you because I have a special relationship with you." "I don't understand what you mean by not reporting." Kelly really didn't understand anything. All she knew was that David had something in his head. Except what? "You see, Kelly, I did go to the restaurant like I was supposed to. I went alone. I figured I'd celebrate my birthday with myself. I was surprised to see my boss at the next table with this ex-boxer. You were so gentle in your conversation that you didn't even notice me. And you also didn't really keep the volume down when you were talking about what you did to the man, the wife of this jock. Your place is behind bars. I hope you realize that. But I'm not a judge. I don't want to work under the same roof with you anymore." She smiled a little. "Sit down. We're going to have to talk." The woman suddenly caught herself thinking that she didn't want this sincere guy to think badly of her. David shook his head negatively, and Kelly had to raise her voice. "David, so you're judging a person without even listening to them." David sighed and sat back in his chair. "I've heard everything with my own ears anyway." And Kelly sat down on the chair in front of him. "Well, I guess I'll start at the beginning, so please be patient. On the first day, Betty met her neighbors. She liked the elderly couple very much, not only because they were nice to her, but because they didn't ask too many questions. They asked right at the beginning, "Who does Kelly think she is?" Betty immediately said that she had just rented a house to improve her health. It was never brought up again. "You know, Betty, any ailment goes away in a country bathhouse. I'll tell my husband to heat the bathhouse today, and you'll see for yourself how much better you'll feel." Betty smiled. She had heard and read a lot about the village bathhouse. She had never been there herself, and she didn't know what it was like. Probably, as everyone told her, that it was hot. Wendy took her to the bathhouse in the evening. Betty literally crawled out of the bathhouse. Thought she was going to die, but after a little rest, she felt so energized. A week later, a strange woman appeared on her doorstep. She came in without knocking, as if she were at home. "Who the hell are you?" Betty stood up. "Who are you?" "I'm Nina." "Nina sold Kelly's house for you," which means Kelly's house. And she didn't even say a word. And she was supposed to sell it to me. Shameless. Betty was taken aback at first, but then she said, "Don't worry, Kelly didn't sell anything. I'm renting the house from her temporarily." Nina looked suspiciously at Faith. "You don't?" "No, really? Why should I? I came after my illness to get some fresh air and regain my strength." Nina slammed the door without saying goodbye. Betty shrugged. She was a strange woman. Fresh air, clean food, and of course, a bath. It did the trick. Betty had gone from being transparent in a matter of months. Not only did she look better, but she could feel her confidence growing in her as well. She was thinking it was time to visit her husband. Sometimes Kelly would call her and tell her that he couldn't get a divorce. Yeah, and the other problem is that Betty is his roommate. Kelly was sitting at the table with David across from her. "Kelly, I can't watch you with that whip." "David, we had a deal." "Yeah, I remember. When is this going to stop?" Kelly looked at him with interest. "Well, like it will be over." "So?" The man turned sharply toward her. "Kelly, are you pretending, or maybe you really don't understand?" Kelly wanted to believe that her thoughts were right, but she knew that all men were basically the same. Why should David be any different from them? She immediately pulled herself back and thought about what she couldn't. It was quite possible that David was completely different, and that meant none of this meant anything. No matter how you look at it, she is older than Dima and has lived in her life much more. And he's pure good. He certainly doesn't need someone like her. David sat down in front of her again. "Can I try to guess what you're thinking right now?" Kelly smiled. "Well, try. Do you think it can't work out between you and me?" Kelly stopped smiling. "Do you think it can?" He took her hands in his. "Not only can, it can, and it definitely will. As soon as you're done with yours." "David, it's not that simple." "You're wrong. It's very simple. And you don't have to build some weird castle. There's two people who could be happy, but they're somehow prevented by some convention." David left. Kelly thought about it. And she would like so much to imagine herself next to David. To imagine that she has a normal family, that they have a child, and she loves this child very much, and does not bring it up because it is necessary, and shook her head. No, none of that is about her. She shouldn't even be allowed to have a baby. Suddenly, after the baby is born, she'll be just like mom too. Kelly picked up the phone. "Clint." "Hi. What are you doing tonight?" He laughed into the phone. "Plans to always be there for you." Kelly grimaced. She was getting tired of him and his constant presence. Trevor didn't understand the concept of privacy at all. The other day he'd said they should live together. Kelly was indignant. "Why? I'm quite happy with the way we live. You're at your place. I'm at my place. No one owes anyone anything." Trevor squinted his eyes. "You're very wrong now. Don't forget, the idea of taking the faith to ruin was ours in common. So you and I are now forever linked." The woman didn't like that look and realized it was time to act. "Len, I was thinking maybe we could go to a restaurant. It's been a long time since we've been anywhere. What's a good idea?" What restaurant did Kelly call? "I called David." She was a little nervous, and it didn't escape Trevor. "What's wrong with you? You seem a little wooden today." "I don't know. I've got a bad feeling." "Oh, come on, don't worry about it. When I'm with you, you know perfectly well that nothing can threaten you." Lennon smiled contentedly and shrugged his shoulders. He remembered to look around to gauge people's reaction to his figure. Suddenly, he froze. Kelly waited for a while and asked Trevor, "What's the matter with you? It's like you've seen a ghost." He cocked his head, turned a frightened look on her. "You could say that. Look to the right third table." Kelly turned her head, gave the seated couple a glance, then turned to him. "Yes, I see my deputy is there with a young woman." "But why did David scare you so much, David? Who the hell is David? Look who's sitting next to him." And she turned around again. Then she said someone she didn't recognize, although the face looks familiar. "That's my wife, Betty." Kelly gasped. "What, are you crazy? You said she wouldn't make it." "I thought that too. But as you can see, she's alive and well." Kelly grabbed Trevor's napkin with trembling hands. "Oh my God. What are we going to do now? What do you do?" "Me. Well, of course, you understand. If she's alive, she'll go to the police and tell them everything you did. How you dragged her to the car. How you left the wedge." He looked angrily at Kelly. "Shut up, it's your fault too. You're the one who told me to do it. And I," Kelly rounded her eyes, "what do I have to do with it? You're her husband, and you decided to get rid of her by any means necessary." Lem didn't have time to answer because the same couple approached their table. "Hello." Slowly, he stood up. "Betty," the woman smiled mockingly. "I see you weren't expecting to see me at all. I'm glad the wedge shook you up a bit. I hope you realize that I'm going to go to the police." Trevor looked at Kelly, who was flapping her eyes fearfully, and asked Betty stupidly, "You haven't been yet?" David and Betty looked at each other, and David spoke. "While Betty hasn't been anywhere, we consulted and decided to give you a chance. As you realize, you're going to be in jail for a very long time for a crime like this. But we can offer you an alternative." Either realized that what he was about to be told would probably not be to his liking, but he didn't want to go to prison. The more he looked at Faith, the more he realized that the Betty in front of him was no longer the Betty he could scare or do hiccups. This new Betty looked at him calmly and confidently. "I guess it's all about the support of this Kelly helper. You give me back everything you took from me within 3 days. Otherwise, we're going to the police." Trevor smiled. "Liar. And go, you can't prove anything." Betty slowly pulled a piece of paper out of her purse. It was her tests, describing the drugs she had been given to get her out of this world as soon as possible. As you can imagine, they're just going to start digging, and there's enough digging for a good sentence. David took Faith under his arm and looked at Kelly. "I think you two need to talk. Your lover, excuse me, friend needs to make the right decision." Kelly thought to herself, not David. That phrase should not have been in his speech. And certainly no one should be saying it to her with such emphasis on the word lover. They left and Trevor wiped the sweat from his forehead. "Kelly, what are we going to do?" She looked at him fearfully. "Like, what are you still contemplating?" "Of course, we have to give everything to them. How to give it all away? And what will be left for me?" Kelly pressed him against her. "Some fool of a freedom you'll get." "Why should I have freedom if I have nothing? You'll drive me away right away." And she looked at him in surprise. "What are you doing? How could you think that? And then we can finally get married. We'll expand my business, and you'll have something to do." Stalin looked at her with admiration. "Kelly, you're a miracle worker. Let them choke on it. I'll give the order to prepare the papers in the morning. We'll go to your place now." Kelly wrinkled his nose. "Well, client, what about me? You can see how I feel. It's no less of a shock to me, believe me. So let's deal with the problem first." Trevor sighed. "Of course, Kelly, you're right as always. And I'll drive you." "No, Trevor, I'll take a cab. I want to be alone. See you tomorrow." Kelly quickly jumped out of the restaurant and rushed to catch a car. She got into the driveway and slowly began to climb up. Interesting. Had Odin and Betty already broken up? Or maybe they decided to celebrate their victory together. Both young, handsome. Why should they get lost? That thought really displeased Kelly. She was so angry, she even pounded her fist on the railing. To hell with them. Who are you fighting with yourself? Kelly shuddered and looked up. There next to her apartment, leaning carelessly on the railing, was David. He was smiling, and Kelly suddenly thought she had a right to be happy for one night. The woman rose silently and opened the door just as silently and froze. David looked at her without a smile and walked inside. In the morning, they were awakened by a phone call. Kelly calls her deputy to this asshole, asking where are we going to sign the papers. David listened intently to their conversation, and Kelly could hardly contain her smile. Trevor, stop being nervous. I'll find out and call you. She only just managed to pass out as she found herself in a tight hug. I don't want any papers. Kelly, did you come back laughing? David will be serious. You've been entrusted with a very important mission. The man leaned back on the pillow, looked at her seriously. And you will marry me. And she froze. It seemed that no one had ever said such words to her before. She was silent, and David spoke again. I give a lot to know what's going on in your head right now. But I'll never know. Tell you what, while we finish our business, you'll think, only Betty won't need our help anymore. You will answer me. Kelly nodded and breathed a sigh of relief. She would have loved to scream. Yeah, that would probably be wrong. There is so little that is the same about them. David is so good, and she is not. The transfer of documents went off without a hitch. Betty barely spoke to her husband. She only talked to the notary. Trevor was terribly annoyed. It seemed to him that if Betty talked to him, he could take control of her again. Trevor had a whole plan matured overnight to make his wife fall in love with him, to persuade her to stay with him, and to make her like she had been before. But Betty wouldn't even look at him, as if he were nothing. He really didn't like the fact that Kelly and that whip and her deputy were sitting together in chairs, as if there was something more than work between them. They should be real enemies now, though. He felt that something was wrong here, but that Kelly would soon be his wife, and he would be in charge of her affairs. Probably put her in four walls so she wouldn't worry, wouldn't be nervous at all. That's it. Kelly, let's go. I looked at Kelly, who wouldn't get up. Kelly, can you hear me? Yeah, of course I can hear you. I just don't understand why you're talking to me like that. Everyone was looking at him and Betty, and that assistant and Kelly and Kelly. Stop making nonsense of yourself. I just lost everything. And you're making a spectacle of yourself. He moves toward Kelly, intending to take her by the hand and lead her away. Doesn't she realize what he's going through? But he's got this David in front of him. Get out of my way. I need to get my woman. David grinned. That's not your woman. There are no women of yours here at all. You gave back something that didn't belong to you. In fact, you should be locked up. You should have everything taken away. You should be on your knees thanking Kelly and Faith. I mean Kelly. Trevor stepped back. He began to realize what had just happened. So it's you. You set the whole thing up. He growled like a wounded animal and threw himself at Kelly, but was immediately fisted by David. Trevor didn't expect anyone to dare to get in his way. That's why he missed the blows so haplessly. He didn't have time to retaliate. He was twisted by the fleeing guards. When the brandings were taken away, the three of them went outside. I suggest we celebrate. Kelly smiled, and I was in favor. Betty supported her, and so did I. They chose a small, cozy cafe. David was a little nervous as soon as they were seated. He asked Kelly, "Are you ready to answer me?" Betty looked at them with interest. She wasn't quite sure what exactly was going on here right now. 6 months from now, beautiful and airy Betty stood next to Kelly. Kelly was terribly nervous for the first time in her life. She only had to walk a few meters to where David was waiting for her. She put aside all her doubts and decided that she was going to be happy despite everyone. And now she was happy. So happy that she was only afraid of losing one thing. That happiness wouldn't keep him away. An hour later, everyone was shouting and congratulating the newly married husband and wife. And Betty, having gotten a moment, whispered to Kelly, "I'm getting married too." Kelly looked at her in surprise. Married to who? Had she missed something? Blinded by their happiness. Married to who? You see, your neighbor Wendy's son came to visit. Kelly has rounded up former rival and now friend Faith. I'm so happy for you, aren't I? Kelly, I was wondering. You're going to be my witness. Kelly didn't laugh at Betty, and no offense. I won't fit through any doors in a few months. David heard the last words and gently touched his wife's arm. "Kelly, are you thinking what I'm thinking right now?" "David, did you overhear?" He laughed and picked his wife up in his arms. "I don't care. The important thing is that I heard something I never dreamed I'd hear." Betty smiled as she looked at them. And in her heart, she hoped that she would be able to say the same words to her husband-to-be